NC Pork. Good for the plate, great for the state. Welcome into the season finale of Time Out, the Tobacco Road Basketball Show. My name is Mike Waddell, and I am joined, as always, by the best two college basketball analysts here in the great state of North Carolina. Up and to my right, it's DG David Glenn, a 38-year veteran ACC journalist, two-time North Carolina Sportscaster of the Year, practicing attorney, entrepreneur, and co-founder of this North Carolina Sports Network. And in the left-hand corner is Coach Kerry Keating, a 12-year head basketball coach at Santa Clara, former assistant coach at UCLA, Tennessee, Tulsa, Appalachian State, Pittsburgh, and Wake Forest, student athlete for the Seton Hall Pirates, former NBA scout, now broadcaster with the Golden State Warriors, and one of the cutting-edge minds in basketball analytics. And gentlemen, since the Florida Gators bested the Houston Cougars and North Carolina native Kelvin Sampson by 2 points in San Antonio, bringing home that national championship to the best team in college basketball, the Florida Gators, out of the best conference in college basketball in 24-25, the Southeastern Conference, the transfer portal has been out of control. 364 teams, gentlemen, in Division I basketball, and they all have 13 scholarship players per team, which means there are 4,732 players at the Division I level, with approximately 2,320 of those guys, or 49% of them, in the basketball portal out there shopping for a bigger and better deal. Kerry Keating, let's start out with you. What does this say about the long-term marketability, viability, and stability of college basketball?
Well, clearly the traditional foundation of college basketball, and we know loyalty, players coming and developing, team identity, what your team's about, your coach's identity, even some familiarity with the coaches and the staff. It's been replaced almost completely now by a marketplace. And from a marketability standpoint, the individual brand appeal is still strong. You're loyal to your school, your alma mater, maybe you're local, your kids are going to camp there, you're here in the Triangle, you're loyal to either Duke or Carolina or State, whether you go there or not, you choose one. But the viability and the stability of it, it's under real stress because it's very hard to build continuity. It's hard for just fans. Forget about alumni connected to the school by that tether. The fans, they don't know who they're connecting with. They don't know who the players are. Coaches are rebuilding rosters from scratch every spring. It's exciting, to an extent as a fan. Now think about this. We just recently saw the NFL draft, and 250,000 people fill an outdoor stadium to watch a commissioner call guys' names to maybe be on the roster. And I always laugh when you have people cheering about a guy. They have no idea who it is. They're just cheering for their team to add another guy. In the NBA circles, one of the most exciting times outside of the playoffs is immediately following is July 1st. Like I remember this Warriors work I'm doing, and when the whole KD thing was going down, it's like a whole season in itself. I don't know if the college basketball model that we know it now will sustain itself without the guardrails that we need. The current model is risking burning out the players and the programs, but I think what we might see is a new March Madness come upon us if, in fact, the portal stays the way it is, players enter, and then it's like, all right, the season's over. Who are we rooting for next year? I completely see that being a possibility as this professionalizes itself in the model of free agency is exactly what we're going through right now. We just happen to call it the transfer portal. So it's going to be a big shakeup still. There's going to be even more chaos before there's stability, but I could foresee that becoming a season within the season after the season in terms of the free agency season for who's my school going to have on the roster coming up.
Your question included several terms that are very different from each other. Stability is one thing. Viability and marketability are other things, right? So the current state of college basketball is completely unstable. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you gave that roughly 50% turnover rate in terms of players putting their names in the portal. Remember, not all schools carry 13 scholarship players. So when you do the math, it probably is a little bit over half of scholarship players who have put their names in. Small fraction decide to stay at their school. But if you have that kind of massive roster churn at almost every program, almost every year, that is fundamentally unstable. That's just the nature of the game. We have name, image, likeness now. That makes more players willing to look around at their possibilities. We have immediately eligible transfers. Remember, for most of our lifetimes, you had to sit out a year. And that was a massive disincentive. And more guys were more willing to stay with their current team, see if they could work their way up the rotation, get more minutes, by their sophomore, junior year. When you're immediately eligible at your new school, where the biggest disincentive to leave, or at least explore leaving, is gone. So it is chaotic. It is unstable. But in terms of marketability and viability, as much as so many people complain about the current state of college basketball for reasons that we understand, and sometimes we agree with those complaints, but we just had the most watched Final Four since 2017. If the I'm tired of name, image, likeness, I don't like these college guys jumping from school to school, it's a disgrace that so-and-so makes $4 million a year and he's not even a pro yet. You can complain all you want, but if you keep watching, well then, with all that instability, it does not automatically translate into people not buying tickets, not watching games, not contributing to their booster clubs. Could that day come at some point? It could. Maybe there's a saturation point where these college basketball fans finally say, I've had enough, I'm done with this. But we haven't reached that point yet. And those TV numbers from the 2025 Final Four and even the 2025 NCAA tournament more generally, when you have the best numbers you've had in 8 years, 2017, there was no name, image, likeness. We didn't have immediate eligibility for all transfers yet. A lot of these massive changes had not yet occurred. Now they have occurred, but they just had those TV partners doing backflips because of the TV ratings for what was a high-powered Final Four with those, 4 number 1 seeds. NBA fans got a glimpse of guys like Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple and other NBA prospects. College fans, in some cases, liked the fact that name, image, likeness money, which has its negatives, kept more guys in school longer so that you had a higher caliber product on the court, because guys who might have left school and played overseas or tried to enter the NBA draft were more likely to stay in school, because unlike in the old days, they could make $1 million or whatever for staying in school that one more year. So all of this stuff has trade-offs, things that you might like, things that you might not like. But in terms of viability, to me, the popularity of college basketball is not in decline. Viability in terms of how these universities and athletic departments can pay all of their bills in the new system, that's a different type of viability. And the answers to that are not very clear right now. Michael Berard, Managing Director Investments with the Founders Group at Stifel, works with a select group of high net worth individuals and institutions to develop and implement investment plans tailored to their specific objectives and risk tolerances. If you are interested in highly personalized, well-researched guidance and outstanding personal service, you can contact Michael at 984-364-2002. That's 984-364-2002. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
This segment brought to you by our great friends at Atlantic Tire and Service, where DG and his family take all of their vehicles for routine maintenance, service needs, and a world-class selection of new tires. Atlantic Tire and Service, your one-stop tire and auto repair provider with highly trained technicians and a sales and support staff that are second to none. They've grown to 6 Triangle area locations, 2 in Raleigh, 2 in Cary, 1 in Durham, and 1 in Wake Forest. You can learn more online at AtlanticTireOnline.com.
One of the great sayings was, it's a 40-year decision, not a 4-year decision. It'd be nice if you could have a 4-month decision to where somebody could stay in that brand and become somebody important to the fans, because that's what your name, image, and likeness, the true ethos of what that was supposed to be, is built on. You stay there, as you said, David. You build up an affinity with the fan base, and they reward you with the deal to be the spokesman for the car dealership or for the local pickle company. Like you had DJ Burns and RJ Davis doing the Mount Olive pickle commercial a few years ago. That's what it was supposed to be. Now it is truly out there shopping on a month-to-month basis. Sometimes North Carolina just had one football commitment that signed with them in the morning, supposedly, but then went to another school in the afternoon. I mean, at some point, there has to be somebody that's going to take the realm here and bring some sense to it. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show, but I did find it interesting that Jaron Stevenson, who is from just outside of Chapel Hill, was long thought to be a commitment to North Carolina, but then he ends up going to Alabama. Now he's coming back. And then you have Ian Jackson, who is from New York. Well, he came to North Carolina, but now he's going to St. John's. Will this result, do you guys think, in more players deciding right out of high school to stay closer to home, or is it always going to be just going to where the biggest bag is?
I think there's incentive to actually stay closer to home because some of these schools and some of these states are going to have more robust NIL models set up in high school. And if they're smart, they will. If you're an athlete that has a chance to play at whatever next level it becomes the next level, you should start your NIL branding or formation of the structure while you're in high school, not to make a bunch of money and go get the bag, as they like to say. But I think just to have that local appeal, and look, if this is where you're raised and this is where you're from and this is where you went to high school, it doesn't mean you have to stay and go. Like if you're here in Raleigh and you go to Bishop, to Gibbons, and you know you went to Broughton High School or Oberlin Middle School, it doesn't mean you have to stay here and go to NC State. But it would behoove you to at least have a structure set up in place, especially here, that appeals to the local marketability of you as a brand, because now your brand gets elevated when you go to the next level and play on a professional level at, say, NC State or Carolina or Duke or even Wake. I don't know if it's gonna show its face that kids are gonna understand that. But if I'm a coach or if I'm a general manager or if I'm helping run a program, I'm trying to appeal to the local kids even more, not just stay home because it might be cheaper from an in-state cost perspective as it was in the old model, but from an opportunistic standpoint to build the brand, certainly, but to build your own brand and have more appeal that while you're going to make money playing for us, you can make just as much, if not more money. You know, one thing I thought about, we were talking about this in the years that I've been able to work for the Warriors through ABC out in San Francisco. They've had an ambassador of their program, and what that ambassador is someone who has stayed in the organization for a decade or longer, or maybe their entire career. Udonis Haslam at Miami. Donald Foyle works with us on ABC TV and KGO in San Francisco. He's been the Warriors ambassador because he only really played the majority of his career and is known in local circles, albeit not from there, but he became a Warriors development in the community. This is something that's going to change the whole alumni development and alumni relations. And I was in this program for 4 or 5 years. Who can develop a stronghold locally and become an ambassador for the program that may never even graduate from the program? Because heck, we don't even know if they have to go to school if they're employed on a 1099 basis by an LLC just to play for that entity. So many factors at play here, but I think there's a heavy incentive if you're smart in a really decent market, not just the top 5, top 10 markets, but in a strong collegiate town market that you can build a brand and want to stay close to home, because it may have implications not just on you short term in the time you're playing there, but certainly when you're done playing and all that, to come back and raise your family and start whatever secondary career you have if it's not in basketball.
Yeah, Mike, I think there's an old school aspect to the answer to your question and a new school aspect, because one thing that has never gone entirely away is I want my family and friends to be able to see me play, right? And DJ Horn, remember the guard on the Wolfpack's Final Four team and ACC championship team, remember he told us that when he was out at Arizona State, his mom and dad actually moved out there and rented a house so they could watch his home games. Well, he's originally from the Triangle, so when he was looking around for a landing place for his final year of college eligibility and NC State recruited him, wow, mom and dad and all my old high school buddies and all my AAU basketball buddies, they could all watch me play all my home games right there in Raleigh at NC State. And a lot of the road games are pretty drivable. So that was one of the reasons, of course, not the only reason, but it's something that you factor in. So that old school angle has never entirely gone away. But the new school angle, I think, is well stated by you and Coach. And I believe I can think of two off the top of my head. In ACC football, Rhett Lashley of SMU, who obviously had a really good debut last year, if you looked at his roster, 100+ dudes, and how they approach the transfer portal, of course, you're looking for talent first. But if you found a guy for some Big Ten school, the old Pac-12 maybe, the Big 12, and you know that he was a high school product in or near Dallas, Texas, and as Rhett Lashley was bringing the Mustangs into the ACC, the number of guys they contacted and signed, in part on the theory, come back here. We're now in the ACC. We have name, image, likeness money to throw around. Get closer to your family and friends. It is a real disproportionate number of those types of guys that the Mustangs signed out of the transfer portal. And the even newer example of that same phenomenon, take a look at what Jay Lucas is doing as the first-year head coach of Miami basketball. If you look at the transfers he has already signed for the upcoming season, one guy played his high school ball in Tallahassee, Florida. Another guy played in Orlando, Florida. Another guy played at Norland High School right there in Miami. And there are other examples that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. But look at his first-year roster, which is not even finished yet. You are going to see a state of Florida theme. You are going to see certain AAU teams based in Florida represented. You are going to see name, image, likeness deals with Florida-based companies, which gets back to what Coach said. If you're building your brand in a specific part of the country, and those companies happen to be based in or near your campus, there's a win-win situation there for the school, the player, and the company. And by the way, real quick, there's a very good chance that in this new world we're still evolving into in major college athletics, there's a really good chance that the NCAA is going to try to regulate third-party name, image, likeness money. So you have to think of revenue sharing as the money coming from within the university. But that the way it's been, that still continues, that third-party, car dealership money, the local hotel or national hotel. There's a movement to restrict that or at least regulate it such that it has to be a public-facing company making those third-party name, image, likeness deals. Well, obviously hotels are public-facing and car dealerships are public-facing, but it raises the question about just the mega millionaire out there who wants to support his favorite school or her favorite school. If you don't own a company or have a stake in a company that's public-facing, well, how do you funnel your money to make sure your favorite team gets players? All that ties back to the locality issue that we're discussing here, where I don't think it's going to be a tidal wave where prospects and transfers, place an enormous amount of weight staying close to home, but it's real and it may be growing because of some of these forces in play.